Today, we're coming from Circle Healing Network, and we have conversations again today with Your Grace, Clan Mother, Karen Ann Lucic McDonald. And thank you again, Karen, for coming on the show and sharing all your wisdom.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for the great invite. It's a great way to spend my afternoon. You know how I love being with you.
I love being with you too, and I learned so much, and you've been just working and helping me heal, and as I always say, you know, it's about healing the body, the mind, and the spirit. You know, so oftentimes we're thinking just in this current system that it's, you know, when you say healing, people just think body, but if your mind and your spirit isn't healed, you know, I know it was funny. I was talking today, real quick, before I introduced the show, to my daughter, and we were talking about a mutual friend who, beautiful woman. She does yoga. She's vegan. She eats very, very, very well. You know, she's into all the cleaning and all the stuff we talk about. Mm-hmm. She's in a very, very stressful relationship. One that she feels she's got to have, you know, one of those commerce relationships.
Yeah. Casual, convenient, commercial relationships.
Yeah. And for all that she does, she just doesn't look what she does in terms of her body and what she puts in it. Mm-hmm. And so that stress is huge. So today we're going to talk about radiation. We touched upon a little bit last week. Right. And as you said, you got a lot of good feedback, and people wanted to hear more about the radiation. So we're going to talk about what is radiation and how is it affecting us, and what can we do to keep ourselves healthy, keep ourselves healed. And I know that you'll talk about a number of things, from what people can do themselves to get started right now, do from home, as well as your biofeedback system that I've been doing along with you. And I know you have a lot of clients that you work with daily, because even when I try to catch up with you, I'm doing it in between a couple of your appointments every day. So it's awesome. You're healing a lot of people. You've got a lot of success stories. And so, you know, what's dear on both of our hearts is actually healing people's bodies so that they can actually be active citizens, or active women and men in this society, to be able to get some things done. So anyhow, without further ado, Karen, I just want to be able to have you jump in and start doing your thing. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, that's a huge introduction. Thank you so much. I did. It was wonderful, as we talked last week a little bit with you, myself, and a little bit with Patty Broussard. A lot of people have been very helpful in educating the population en masse with what's been going on. This has been going on well before, if we want to say Atlantis, for a long, long time. And, you know, I was just looking at a video actually by Marcus Rothkrantz. And if you put it Marcus Rothkrantz, he's very well known in the raw food and vegan, you know, off-grid kind of lifestyle. Him and Kira Rotman have just put out some new books called Love on a Plate. But what most people don't know is that Marcus has been in the Las Vegas area where they detonated over 800 and some nuclear, you know, radiation bombs. These are being detonated right across globally. So wow. I really got much more aware of it, if you want to say, in March 2011. I think most of us were aware of what happened in Fukushima. And there were a lot of things, you know, in talking with some of my friends that are on the inside, you know, like former sergeants, you know, Patty Broussard, or different people that have been following that. It did set off or detonate an entire thing that the population needed to become aware of about radiation. But in my thing is, I'd like to be in a state of excitement, in a state of radiation anyway. So really, right. It's about the inside and the outside maybe matching, as opposed to going into a lot of fear. Is there detrimental things happening? Absolutely, because people have not been protecting themselves or the planet. Mm-hmm, and I think a lot of this is really sad when we've been able to look at some of the different things we see on e-news, or Radiation Graphic Room is a great one on Facebook. We've got numerous information things out there now for people to get educated. And, you know, it was really sad to me that, you know, when we started learning about happening, you know, in different areas, maybe the first one I ever kind of really dealt with anyone with was in clients of mine when I was in Saskatoon, where again I happen to be again today, coming around full circle to that medicine wheel here. Anyway, is that I had actually clients that were close to Chernobyl.
Wow.
And that touched something really near and dear to my heart. And then I also had clients that were up in the northern area here. A lot of the indigenous or other people are up in the what they call the mines up here, which they shouldn't be mining or fracking, unfortunately, here. But this seems to be the headquarters of, you know, chemical and all the uranium and all this sort of thing going on as well. And we knew the detrimental things, because we really don't need in this day and age to be using, you know, nuclear kind of radiation thing that does create detrimental things to our population and to the animals and to the environment. You know, as I've just spent, you know, a week on and off studying with Mihan Keshi and the Spaceship Institute for Free Plasma Technology, which we'll come into. I think it's really, really important that was one of my first wake ups, and I'm going, oh my gosh, you know, this is sort of some sort of, you know, sacred kin domain and some sort of soul sister of mine, and this poor woman, because the first thing I, you know, put her on my biofeedback years ago, and this, by the way, back here is the actual machine that was developed here. And so if I do have someone, you know, live, we put little straps on them here, but that's like a landline. If I have a client hooked up, we can also send it to you obviously wirelessly, like, you know, faxing into you or talking to you like Skype. Yeah, so we can actually use this kind of radionic, which again is a form of radiation. We're dealing in the radio waves, in that spectrum above the visible light, you know, ultraviolet, gamma, that sort of thing, delta, all up in that high. So we're hitting into the high frequencies, basically. So what was really interesting to me is when this girl came in, is that the first thing, you know, supposedly flagging to me on my 9,000 test data bank, and this was developed, by the way, by Dr. William Nelson, who's now in Budapest. And we do actually have universities now. He's got Immune out there, and Dr. Paul Duran has got, which I've been part of. We have one called the IQUIM, and that's the, you know, international integrative quantum integrative medical universities now of this caliber, which far surpass really what we see in the universities, you know, for medical schools or naturopathics of any kind of caliber. And that's where we get people like, you know, Dr. Nassim Harriman and David Avocado Wolfe, you know, teaching this kind of thing, Amit, that sort of thing. So people that are really into quantum and really have a fairly good grip on what's going on. Those are our kind of professors. And we have, you know, people that can go and get their doctorates or just start out in a beginner level or just for at home use, just from being in virtual universities being taught. Now, the radiation has been going on for a long time, and we've seen the detrimental fallouts of it's desalinating, you know, the oceans. We're seeing a lot of the bottom of the ocean bed. A lot of it's almost dead. But to me, that's also an outer reflection, and it's a really sad state of what's happening with the population here. Because one, the people have allowed it to get to this state through, again, a lack of caretaking or gardening this beautiful Gaia Earth that we've been given and gifted with, really.
Exactly,
And
definitely a gift.
Absolutely, it's a gift. And, you know, a lot of people, we've got spring waters. We hardly have any drinkable spring water anymore. And that's really the key issue, is that people have got to come back to protecting spring water.
And I know that when you and I worked together, you the first thing you told me was to find spring water. And I'm here in Arizona, in Phoenix. And I tell you, I really spent time looking on that findaspring.com. And I don't know if I shared it with you, but I went down some rabbit holes. And my closest spring is 2 hours away or something like that. And it's all up on some back roads. I haven't even made the trip yet. But it's just amazing that that's far away in a major area like this. You know, so it's not an easy thing to get in a lot of places.
Well, we have to look at part of our genealogy, right? And that's why I'm very much with Clan Mothers and over our tribes and our 13 original bloodlines, right?
Yeah.
And so our people were tribal and still are. I'm still tribal. You know, we need to be where the water is. And that's how the tribe or the population was. And what's happened is through the global industrialization and pharmaceutical, petrochemical, military complex that we've seen happen now, is the people have been literally herded like prisoner of war camps into the cities, or even just as bad as a band of reserve, which is why they're classified as a third world citizen or inhabitant, right? Or, the public, domain, or the private person domain, right?
Exactly.
Again, still forms of, imprisonment or enslavement. And hardly, with the access to, having like a wild, noble savage moving everywhere freely, in nobility like what we are. And that's really what we've come back to, is we're going to have to go down to those foods and the waters, because the water goes down very, very deep, and it picks up what we call noble elements. And that would be the ormus, or what we call the minerals. And so it is important that we have that water, because there is no such thing. I don't know if it's like getting a divine alchemical marriage, but you want the most exciting, you're that twin ray, that beloved.
Right.
And the thing too is that is a beloved water. It's been made by creation. It's been gifted by the mother. And those noble elements are feminine, and they're actually rising up to levitate up the soul, or our soul tree. And that's what gives us, if you want to say, atonement or enlightenment. And that is no different. That's why, it has to do with admiralty and maritime law. What's really interesting, though, is when you get things, let's say, like the, as we put in, what was the original primordial water, the oceans, the cosmos, is getting that salt or the saline in. Excellent book. I know. Have you seen that book? It's called Water and Salt, The Essence of Life by Dr. Barbara Handel.
No, I haven't. You told me
to
look for it, but I didn't find it on Amazon.
I'm going to really encourage people. Even there's some cute little things on YouTube. I think there must be 6 or 8 little, vignettes there. You can get videos. But I really encourage people to at least learn about that. Is that once you put the Himalayan salt, or, you could have a red salt. Like I'm just showing here because people really haven't got too much of a clue. But I've got Hawaiian salt here. I also have some black salt. And this black is because it has actually activated charcoal in it, kind of like zeolite or bentonite. So we want things that are going to absorb or chelate out or neutralize, like a Faraday cage, kind of just collect all that stuff that shouldn't be in us and, take it out of our system to chelate it out. Right. But that's what that does. And so when you actually put, if we want to say, that spring water and add that little bit of, a Himalayan salt, which goes back to like Atlantis, it's mined so deep. You put the water back in, it just reactivates. It's like being back in that time period, or reactivating your inner genes. And it's the noble elements, the ormus again, that comes through. It's like what they used to call the shoe bread. Moses would call it in the scriptures, but it had the gold.
What was it called in the scriptures? What?
Shoe bread. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. You bread.
That's like the shoe bread. Yeah.
No.
And that's kind of like, the gold calf. But remember, these aren't literal things. They're all metaphors.
Right.
And that's why I really encourage people to study, if they haven't. Learn a little bit of astrotheology, part of the truth movement or universal truth. A friend of mine is Santos Bonacci. And you can look him up at
he's good.
Amazing stuff. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like him and Jordan Maxwell or Michael Tessarian. Again, really core, very old information that's still pertinent to today, and they talk about the Irish origins and stuff, but, back to Stonehenge and the Stargates and the original tribes. And so a lot of people aren't aware that some of the original tribes were actually my tribe that was set down here. We were the original gardeners.
Right.
Some people call us the guardian angels, or the Klan Mothers were actually referred to as the angels of pure light. Wow. The queens of the heaven, or the queens of the sea, or the queens of the genes. Genesis, that was the Bible. And so that actually is where our genetics, so and so begat so and so. Which mother did you come off of? Ursa
Right.
Major, the she bear, Ursula, in the constellation of the star seeds. But,
Right.
there were agreements between all that, the seven sisters, the stars of the Pleiades, or it was Lyra, or to be a vegan, so I'm having my vegan potluck on Monday here in Saskatoon.
Oh, I know. I wish
So,
I could be here for that. Sounds
oh my
so
gosh.
good.
And
And it's
we're going to be
like
talking a lot about this.
well, you were talking just now about the basically the lineage, the mother, the mother that begot. So it was, matrilineal. And
Always.
I was just sitting there thinking about that's so Numbers, the book of Numbers basically is an overlay
Mhm.
story, where
Yes.
it made it patriarchal, but from the original. And that's one of the things that I think that a lot of our listeners, and as we continue down this rabbit hole, and if you go to listen to people like Bonacci and
Mm-hmm.
Maxwell and what have you,
Right.
you'll see that the Bible is definitely coding. And so a
Oh,
lot of
totally.
people are not even kind of like there in their belief systems about it being coding, but it really is coding. And the quicker
Totally.
you get to that place and say, okay, it's coding, what is it trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much health and healing and prosperity in that message.
Yep.
If you can get it off of the patriarchal system that's designed to create death, and get it back on the matrilineal that's about freedom and life and living. And that's where you
Absolutely.
actually are coming out of in terms of with being the Klan Mother right now, and holding this space that people can kind of get back to.
Right.
And you've been really championing in that position, just holding it. It's like holding the gate open so that people can catch up with it and get back to where we all need to be.
Yeah,
So I wanted
absolutely.
to throw that in there because I want people to really understand that, we're just not sitting here today just coming up with, a controversial kind of thing to just throw out there. But this is out there and it's being exposed more and more. And like you said, astrotheology is very, 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 very old, and it predates the new patriarchal system, actually. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's why I always stick with, what is it that you know? When someone tells me that I'm a believer, I went, oh, geez, here we go again. But it means to be lying. That's what it means. It means that you're lying. You're in a
be
state
lying.
of
Exactly.
to be lying because you don't know. And there's a difference between having the knowledge and then the experience of it, that application, and then that is what wisdom is. And
Right.
so when I sit here and go, we cracked the code. Yeah, well, we did. Do I have the gift of discernment because we're dealing with CERN right now? Yeah, I have the gift of discernment too in healing. I have all those gifts. But one of the things too that's great, and that's about sharing. That's what the original 13 lines did, and that it all comes back to the medicine wheel. It all comes back to that inner circle, to each one of us going through all those ages and that education, but coming back to the center core and realizing that people are at different stages in their evolution.
Exactly.
And one of the very key pivotal things is that people have to do their own studies. And, it's no different than, if I said, okay, are you aware of, Sir Francis Bacon, who was really the Earl of, this, that was related to, Queen Elizabeth, that was really the fairy queen, that was really the fae, that really came in with the, tried to make contracts, and their contracts are done with the Klan Mothers. They observed a lot of that stuff, and that it wasn't Shakespeare. That was all commissioned, and all those books at that time were all done by the same sort of people that were really scribes, or the Pharisees, or the Sadducees, or call it whatever you want. We would call it an attorney. I call it a legal advisor. They're not lawyers in my world. They turn you away from that law. So it is. And ask any man, where did you come through? His mother.
His mama.
His mama. So always, where's your blood lineage? Always through the mother.
It is.
And matrilineal, and it's not that, and it has total opposite from feminism. It was a very balanced thing with, councils, and there was beyond 13, but 14 and stuff. But the men and the women, that was the formation of the higher courts, and the Star Nations courts that have nothing to do with the governments here that are, people think they really have the illusion of having some voice in, which they don't. And in fact, when you do register, you're now registered as property, as chattel. So in fact, the women have lost all their, potential that they would have had on here. And that's something people, if they want to learn more about that rabbit hole, they can go study all they want. They can go to Merridith, Quinn, tribal laws, the foundation of international laws. So when we say, who are you? How do you present yourself? How do you present, and how do we greet each other? How do we meet each other in peace? And how do we even shake hands, so that we come together, that, we have no weapons and that we bear our arms in loving arrangements here. And that still is actually law. That supersedes the legal contract, our covenant. Our word is foremost.
Right.
And I shouldn't have to put it on a piece of paper.
And
that's a huge...
Yeah, that's huge. And speaking to that, I was thinking here as you're talking, we do talk about the fact that this is for the last few hundred years, the system became patriarchal, robbing the matrilineal lineage and taking the power away from the feminine and all that, and we could go down that rabbit hole another point, but we know, and I think our listeners can surmise that it was designed to just kind of control the feminine energy that and not just from an energetic standpoint, but because of the law, because of legal versus the law, and really trying to control what was going on the planet. And because it goes, they got us stopping at the idea that, it's just about male female domination. It's not about that at all. It's bigger than that. It's about the planet and who controls it. And as you have been teaching me, but I was sitting here thinking that my own background is in anthropology and history, is what my degree program was in, and what a lot of Americans still don't know, that when we went through the slave times here in America, and you had what was on the books at that time is that no man could own a man, right? You couldn't own a man, but because slaves weren't considered men or people, you were able to own them. But what also was happening with the slave masters is that as they were sleeping and having sex, having commerce with the women who were slaves, and we say commerce, and it was really commerce then for sure, because they were able to procreate more human beings that could be on the plantation and work for them. They flipped it so that the way they were able to do that legally, and it not being their bloodline that they were still now owning, is that birth certificates are matrilineal. So the race of the child is determined by the mother. And that's still current on the books here in America. So if you have an African-American man and a Caucasian woman coming together, and they create a child, technically that child is Caucasian because it follows the race of the mother.
Correct.
And that is little known, but it was done to get around. So, this whole thing gets flip-flopped to the advantage of the system, but they know the system and they know the rules and they know what they put on the books, so they can continue to manipulate that. And so when you were talking about that popped into my mind, that the reality of that even today.
Yeah, and that's very, very true. And so, a lot of people that have done their research, including teenagers, I've seen where they traced all, supposedly presidents and Obama to Bush to whatever, back to Elizabeth, to they're all related and half of Hollywood. Well, that's exactly why. That's exactly why, the same tribe or the same blood lineage or that race, right? And so that's really huge, that the color of the skin is irrelevant, because it has to do with the blood lineage. It's transmitted through mother side, and I'll just briefly touch on this. If people really want to learn who they are, you need to know your mother's lineage to your mother, to your mother, to your mother. So all of us can trace which tribes we came from. We present ourselves in those courts that way. And then we know our coat of arms, our DNA, our shields, and then as well, that's why it's incumbent, that people need to know this vital information, because it's called
vital.
the MD, or mitochondrial DNA, or the 7 daughters of Eve. And you can look up Oxford University or Brine Sykes. People can do swabs as well and find out which one they belong to, because that's the definition of a nation. Not the United States, not Canada, not Russia, not China, not anything like that. Those are countries or de facto made up bank accounts, or the people are in a what I call second class or third class. Legal terms or jargon is corpus juris secundum, or CJS, and I'm not of that class. Okay, and then a band of reserve, or Aboriginals or natives and stuff like that, or even lower as inhabitants, they're like a third class. Or you'll hear, oh, Canada's dropped into a third class country, and everyone went, well, what was the first class? We missed that. That vital information that's not taught even in the legals to the barristers and solicitors, or stuff in the law school. So I have quite a fun time dealing with international lawyers now.
No, you did.
I did. I've had an excellent time in Saskatoon, and a friend of mine has been following me, since 2009 on Facebook. And I ran into him in the health store, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he says, "Listening to you. I'm getting superfoods." What are you doing? I'm a lawyer now. He says, and I understand you. And he said, but we're really going to require your help, because we're really only getting maybe about 25% of what you're trying to, teach out there. So you got to help us for the other 75. So it was kind of funny, as we're dealing with stuff too. And again, that's why, doing driver's license does not apply to me. Doing taxes and passports and stuff like that does not apply to me. We're the original gardeners of stuff of here too. And this is where people have to learn, no taxation, and really get into what's called community contribution, or the law of gifting. And that was the peace law. So just to touch on this, because we want to talk about peaceful foods. If we're going to start talking about sharing informational wisdom, and we want to have people elevate themselves, or, tone up, or, chakra alignment, or whatever we want to call here, we need to have everyone come together here and start sharing. It's not about making more money or joining organizations. That's the last thing we require. What we require is people sharing what they already have. And a lot of it has been very detrimental to the planet. You have no idea how it breaks my heart having to go or stay in homes and stuff like that. And I'm getting quite ill or contaminated. Not that I'm sick. What it is that I have got like such a high alert system, or cleaned out, or extrasensory perception, gifted, whatever we want to say, crystal, indigo. What happens is that I'm noticing things that most people wouldn't. So I'm noticing the scented candles. I'm noticing, the smell of the dead carcass stuff coming off in the fridges. The GMOs have chemicals that are volatile, that off gas, and you can't keep Febreze or scented candles or whatever. You can't contain it. Just like a nuclear reactor, you can't contain it. If anyone knows the hint of quantum physics, everything is about movement. It's just degrees of solidification. But there's nothing totally solid, right? But one of the things I really want to encourage people, because this is really a time of hope and a time of peace, because we really have cracked the codes, so to speak. And there's many people there. And one of the things I do want to recommend, because most people are suffering the effects from radiation, because they're not radiating. They're half dead. And so what this is doing is it's pushing or accelerating an aging or calcification process. And so it goes right through all your dimensions. It's from the blood and the bones and whatever, and all those different chakras that are not measurable in the public hospitals. And this is why I'm very grateful to have this kind of radionic technology that's been gifted to me. I've been a radionic technician and specialist in quantum biofeedback. Plus, I have probably 30 years of medical. I was a neonatal nurse actually at the Royal University Hospital with little babies for about 15 years in intensive care. Then I had my aha moment. Went, okay, no drugs. It's essential oils. Thank you, Dr. Gary Young, and all the different things, Dr. David Stewart, and I became an aromatherapist and a master blender as well. And I really encourage people to start going that. So if we could just focus on what is it we need to start radiating so that we have our inner glow.
Exactly.
That's what we want to do, because it starts in here. It starts really in our soul, and it starts in the mind. And the mind is the matter. It really is. And so it's how we perceive things and how we transmute things, or how we can alchemize this. It's a very, very, at one point it was a very secret, hidden, occult, metaphysical thing. And this is about sharing information. And it's always going to be reaching those people that, are ready for the information. As we say,
Right.
they're in that dimension or that chakra. They have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. And sometimes they go the other way around.
Yeah.
But, and these are the pearly gates. And right here, we're kicking the money changers out of the temple. Somewhere people in their first 7 years have been programmed, or MK, or we call mind control, through different programmings, picked up the wrong thing. So like a computer, you got some virus or some weird program and you're on Windows 2 or 3, and the rest of us are, starting back at the beginning, maybe Windows 10. If we take off that 0 is really Windows 1. So we're trying to give you back the original program again.
Right.
It's how you perceive things, and where your knowledge base is. That's why I'm saying that I don't get into discussing books. I'm saying I've read certain books, and some of them many, many times, that it creates a common, background for us. Does not mean that I haven't read the other 800 books and you're still looking at the first book.
Right,
and
exactly.
I was looking at the quorum. I was looking at the quorum, and then I was looking at the Seeing Gospel of Peace. I was looking at all the other books, and then I was looking in the original text and then the original Chromatic language.
Right, exactly.
Because I wasn't quite satisfied it was all correct yet. And I went, I got to go to that Temple of Isis and let me just decode this, and that obelisk, and that's where the Clan Mothers, actually that is where the Clan Mothers different things are on their territorial. So those obelisks and stuff are very, very important when you know about the different stones and stuff like that, because that was really all about the Clan Mothers and the territory and land, and how they held their motherland, which is very important the way we see it in the Anastasia books and the Ring and Cedars of Russia. The people with the Vedas and the knowledge, the original peoples. So, you can either be part of your original peoples or you can be an Aboriginal,
Right.
That's really, and in this day and age, it's the age of Aquarius, the age of flow, age of water. It's the age of information. And so there really is no excuse. And ignorance of the land of the law is no excuse anymore. And that's why we say diplomatic community better mean having your immune system intact, because there's no such thing as diplomatic community. You have to know this. It's a time of knowledge. And so,
and it's one of the things that, it's a time, and I wanted to just jump in there real quick, because you obviously, this is right on, Karen, and the thing is, it's not only the age of information and knowledge, it's the age of misinformation about the natural Aquarian flow of knowledge that is coming forth. And so I think that one of the things that you and I have talked about, and I know I have a passion for, and you do too, is helping to decode the truth. And a lot
the truth movement.
Right. And that's what I love about, what Santos is doing as well. It's like looking at the language, in any language, it doesn't be English, any language, and break down what those words really are meaning. And so you have a whole movement that I think has come in on the wings of more of the non-benevolent, extraterrestrial forces to confuse. And so things like, so we're talking about healing, and we're talking about opening the body up, and we're talking about, the types of things that you recommend to your clients and you're recommending to this audience to start doing, so that you can raise the vibrations, which you were just talking about, that you can, open up the pineal and open up this, the sacred chakras, and really begin to resonate and understand and connect back to Gaia.
Right.
And in doing so, you have this whole movement that's talking about ascension is something outside of us, and something that some kind of way maybe our spirits are going to ascend, and some kind of way it's going to pull this third dimensional body some kind of way into this fifth dimensional place, but nobody really knows how it's going to be done. And so this is all, to me, just another way to muddy and cloud the fact that the ascension happens within us. And there's no such thing as massive salvation. That's all designed to keep us.
like a mass.
It's like
I'll
okay,
break
Karen.
that word down. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna check with you to see whether or not you've raptured yet. I mean,
No,
the whole
but
idea
I
of all
intend to.
yeah, you know what I mean? And so it's idiotic.
Rapture.
It really is idiotic. And the more we can get people to understand that it's happening inside. And it's about healing, it's reconnecting there. So I wanted to throw that out there because I want to maybe help people to start thinking a little differently about the words we're using and where these activities are going to actually happen. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
I'm just going to toss a few things and I'll just say, I don't know in my experience. What I can say is I have read it or I've met with different people that have, told me they've been there, or, this is my testimony, as someone would think, but it's actually on my oath is what I am. I'm standing on my oath. I'm bearing my oath, actually. And this is why it's great to have friends, back to when you look at the Ninher Hag, the original Clan Mothers of the Hag court, the original nuns, Nin, and the whores, Hag was the original, one of the mothers here. So when we go back that far and start tracing different things in the Hag court and the peace courts and stuff, and as you talked about ETs and kind of like some sort of an alien, rapture or the raptors,
right,
raptor and stuff on the moon base and stuff, and I've got friends in all different fractions. It's Vinaru, and that means that we're friends. I see you, I see your soul. We're from the same creator, right? And when you look at that, that's an amazing thing that we get down to the basics, to the core soul of who we are.
Right.
And one of the things that we all can share here is actually about the experience of water. And I could play with the words and we can start doing a whole linguistics, because that's one of my specialties, is decoding and deciphering and doing all sorts of things and helping masters and these different things and setting up fun things and lodges. But it's really about bringing things back to balance. It really was our original system that's been usurped. So it's just really just bringing back and doing that. So there's not even books and files and stuff to claim and putting these things into these private sectors, or thinking you can do private banking or 1099 OEDs, whatever. I don't even go down there because it's just so unlawful that everyone's getting arrested anyway. So but what we do share is we share the water. And so I really encourage people to go to findaspring.com. That is more like an H3O. And we talked about talking with, when I was on the basis 47 with Miles Johnston, and we love Miles. And I love all my brothers and sisters at the basis, and Max Spires and Harold Krantzvala, very huge about learning about what's happened to the water with sentient black goo and the AI.
I love what Miles is doing with that basis project, because it really is helping. It's really helping to separate out the whole alien, extraterrestrial, all the beings that are in play on this planet. And I think, I would encourage the listeners, that's one good place to go to really start sorting out these various beings. Absolutely.
That's wheat from chaff right there. And if you want to, if that's too hard for you, start at something called Spirit Science. It's really cute because it's actually a cartoon, but it's actually what I took all my children to. And I love Spirit Science. It's designed for adults too, but it's more of a, very sacred geometry and kind of stuff, but it talks to the beginnings. It's a little easier than Climatica or down the bleep, what the bleep and down the rabbit hole sort of thing, what we do. But when you get down to the water, it's the primordial source of everything, and I call the creation not source, which comes off my land, by the way, at Cypress Hills. So I have a flag up there for a reason, and slept out there for weeks. I don't appreciate when draconian basis and things are being whipped away and fracked and clear cut and stolen to underground military bases to get piped out to like Denver underground military base. I don't care between if it's Nelson and Suffield, it's all gonna be replaced and restored for sure. We got pole shifts coming up. But when you get the water, I'm going to encourage people, one is to get alkalized. All disease starts in a state of negativity, is what they call, or evil deities or negative emotions or whatever they want to say. Devil position is not really it either. But what it is, it's an infection. And when we become acidic, our things start rotting out. So this is actually litmus paper. People can get it at a health store. We want to be radiating in this gamma field. That's where the gamma UV fields are. So we want to be vibrating and levitating up there. And water holds all the colors as well. It holds spectrum. So when you actually put pH drops into that, And you can't use this paper to test this, by the way. You have to use a meter or pH drops at you for pools. You'll see that it turns a certain color. Sometimes they turn green, sometimes they turn blue, sometimes they turn kind of a violet color, because that's the spectrum. They're holding all those different color hues. So that's what we want to do. And what we can do is just actually take a little bit. You can see just on the bottom here, there's a little bit of, I gotta watch my computer too. You can see there's a little bit of powder dust there.
Right.
And that's the Himalayan salt. And I put some black in there in Hawaiian too, and Celtic, and I have quite a few salts. Make sure you get those, because what you're now going to do, as Maria Wheatley talks about, it's kind of more like an H3O. This is how I kind of explain it. It's got a triple spiral. And if you know about the Star Child and you know about Lloyd Pye and the Human Genome Project, we're actually supposed to have like a triple spiral. Like water vortexes. We should be vortexing. You know, not in this bipolar dichotomy dualistic thing. And so really it's about bringing balance back, or we'd say homeostasis, or peace, or something on there. You know, it's like you know. Anyway, first thing we do is we get the foods that are alkaline. So we want to have 80% alkaline foods. And virtually that's what I do with my clients. I get them on, and you can download alkaline foods. So one of my favorite foods you can do right now is raw cacao. Most people love raw cacao. It's chocolate. And they don't realize that it actually comes in a bean. And I think what I'll do, I'll just show people, if I may. I brought the kitchen shelf here, actually.
Right down here with you, yeah.
I got the kitchen right beside me here. We want to go into foods, and tree foods are really full of great deep things, because those tree roots, like in Avatar, go really down. That's the neural network.
Right.
So if you actually look at the mushrooms, or you take the tree of life and invert it, kind of like that crop circle back, you know, that's why we really got to get Maria Wheatley and that kind of, you know, some awesome people.
Definitely, definitely. Energy.
Yeah, cacao is actually a bean here. That's actually what chocolate looks like. I know. Everyone went, what? It looks like an almond. But that's actually what chocolate starts with. It starts in a tree. And these come off that tree. And then what we do is we grind them up. And when you peel off the coating to it here, it's actually purple. So there's actually what chocolate looks like in its raw form.
Wow.
That's the virgin chocolate right there. That's cacao. So it's not cocoa, it's cacao.
No, cow.
And so cacao, holy cow.
It's holy cow for sure.
And by the way, that was with K's. Anyway,
what's the name of the tree that it comes off of? What's the name of that tree?
It's a different one in here. Actually, there's a great book, if people want to go, is called Naked Chocolate by David Wolfe and Shazi. They're on my Facebook. Now, it's actually a tree, and David Wolfe is now growing them, and he's quite the little gardener. And, you know, there's tons of stuff on there. And it's a theobroma, actually, on there. And so this goes back, and this was actually worth, instead of 25 cents, but they used to have actually entire, what you call, I don't call banks, but storage places. That's what the temples were, by the way. They stored food. And by the way, if you haven't seen different things, I have actually cacao, holy cacao, but I've got chocolate essential oil. So these are different essential oils and things. And we've got raw cacao essential oils.
Oh.
Okay, so, you know, most people are used to it.
Essential oil.
I know. We're used to thyme, oregano. We've heard of frankincense. We've heard of a lot of that, but those are actually essential oils in the finest, highest form, and they're vibratory. So if we want to be vibrating and full of radiation, and this is a natural placement. So to me, when people say they have cancer or diabetes, it's really because it's in a state of you don't know. And cancer looks like a crab, so to me, you're full of parasites, which is why we say it's always fungus derivative. And that's why you can use baking soda. Yeah. Well, you might want to get into, are you past Aries? Are you past Capricorn? And are you in Ram or Aries up in here? And open the gate. Or the 13th one was actually the Clan Mother Ophiuchus and the Age of Aquarius. So this is like what we call the dawning of the Age of Aquarius. So it's about bringing back or sharing to your memory, but sharing again information. And so really what we do is we take these oils that's not just aromatherapy, and you always cold air diffuse. You never burn them. Never, never, never burn. So what we want to do is you can put them in a mister. You can put them on your skin through massage. Or more importantly, like I was showing the other day, is you can get these clear capsules. at any health store. That's a veggie cap right there. So we're going to learn to replace drugs with essential oils. That's what I had to do. Now I'm a nurse. I'm a true nurse. And what we do is I might put some castor oil in, or I might put some hemp oil or some olive oil or something like that. And I might open up my essential oil then and just actually put a couple drops in here. So that's my essential oil. It could be thyme, clove. It could be a whole mixture of stuff. So really what we do is we make a salad of foods. And I have carrot essential oil. I have tomato essential oil, celery essential oil.
Wow.
But the most important ones really are the tree oils to start with. Frankincense, myrrh, Palo Santo, cacao. And again, what's the color spectrum from the plants? So cacao as an essential oil is very, very, very pure. And so most of some of the tribes remember, I've got tobacco essential oil here, by the way. I have sage essential oil, cedar wood. And that's what helps people get off the denser foods or the lower density vibration and raise their vibration back up. So that's actually an essential oil capsule that is far more potent, that you don't need to then be using drugs. You don't need to be using vaccinations. And this naturally brings your vibration up. It's all about vibration or sound. And when you learn about oils, for example, have a vibration like a radio station. So do all the viruses and bacteria. So if you were dead and we had to crash, code you in the hospital, we used energy or electricity, right? We created an arc, across the heart. And again, fourth dimension, shock. What are we trying to do? And the people weren't grounded, so we grounded back into the electrical system and just created an arc through there. And actually I could do it with my hands as well too in essential oils. There are other ways to do it other than the crude form that they use in the hospital. So I have other ways of doing it too, or essential oils, or getting some saline water. They're doing different things. But what you can do is that we want to get people going back to the very basics of using these essential ingredients, because that's what's missing. And so when someone coded they were flatline zero, we couldn't find a brainwave, we couldn't find a heart, we couldn't find anything in any chakra, no vibration. So we went to tune into the radio station, there's nothing there. When I have my machine here, it will show me your chakras, and some people I can barely see their root chakra, their infrared, they're barely here physically.
Wow.
Or their second chakra's here, or the third one's over here, or this is what it looks like, or the third eye shut down. And so we actually can measure that on the scale biofeedback. So I do 9,000 tests plus chakra and curling photography, and I can see the gas visualization around people. I can see your auric field if you have an immune system or not. So some of ours are very, very large. And so what happens is we want to get something that vibrates. So most of the lower entities in the liver, angry, parasites, candida, mold, yeast, fungus, diabetes, whatever it's hitting those lower organs, are going to be in the 40 or 50s in hertz. They have a sound. And so what we can do is take this machine and just go and send stuff in the, invert the wave, and they just actually get magnetically pulsed out of you. So we can actually, like an ultrasound, get rid of a tumor or a virus.
Oh, wow.
And same thing, if it's in the mental, we say the mental, is it in our brain? Is it in our memory? Is it in the 600 hertz? Well, then I'm going to just crank this machine to the 600 hertz. Or do I have to go to 432 to go into your heart? What is the frequency or the sound I need to adjust here? Like an organ, this is the orchestra or organ tuner. We're just tuning you in or toning you in. Your day of atonement. Oh, we're doing. I love it. It's not hard. It really isn't. Let's make it simple and fun. So the same thing with the food. Now what I've done is I've made this essential oil, let's say if it's Valor, to deal with the physical, then I have one keyed that Gary Young has done. It's called Valor, but it's got frankincense and spruce and
I like that
tansy and stuff. Oh, it's amazing. But that's coded at 46 hertz. So we can actually move open the whole electrical system or nervous system. So we can actually call it like a chiropractor in a bottle, because it frees up the nervous system and the electrical thing, so I can move the spine. So I've actually broken my ankle and moved my bones. I did surgery for 3 breaks, so I was my own, orthopedic surgeon doing it that way.
I always say that Valor is like a therapist in a bottle too, because it can bring some it can integrate past and previous experiences that you may have had shut away, and begin to integrate those things as well. It's interesting. I like that analogy.
Yeah, it's an amazing technique in here. And when people start realizing the validity of what we're talking about, oils and food are always color coded. And so every food also has a pH level. So we start with the pH and get them looking at that. So the higher colored foods like cacao and stuff like that are actually in those color tones. So actually, I'll just show you. This is from, by the way, Essential Science Publishers. It's been changed to Life Science Publishers. Okay. So this is actually where all the books are that I get. People go, where do you get all your information? Well, for the last decade, actually almost 2 decades, 20 years, is Life Science Publishers. So these are actually the textbooks on oils, herbs, frequency, quantum medicine. So you can see all the oils that are designed. So it might tell you what color to go into, or your foods. So your blueberries, your cacao, strawberries, what are you doing? What area are you cleaning out here? That's why, beets are good for blood, that kind of thing. Right. And I do want to mention very carefully, this does not include anything in the supermarket. This means that you're talking virgin foods. Just like me being a virgin, you're uncontaminated and our minds are free and no one can control us. We know what virgin is. It means pristine. It means pure. It means not colonized. That's why we all do colonics and we have our colons cleaned, because we're not colonized. So there's nothing here that can breed in us or can attach to us in a lower vibration. So when we're in a state of absolute ecstasy and bliss and excitement, well then joy, peace of mind, well then people that are in that lower state and still being controlled by fear, betrayal, those kind of things, they'll sometimes pull away. It's just too much for them. It is being in that kind of, and we call that entrainment. So even by you and I talking about this, people are receiving this education or this vital information, and they're receiving the energy because they're able to perceive it off the aura that we're connecting. And when we connect like this, you and I are connecting eye to eye like this, right? They're seeing into the windows of the eye. And so when I see my clients for biofeedback, I can have them bring their eyes right up. This becomes my virtual office. I can do the iridology through here. I can have them stick out their tongue and read their tongue in like traditional Asian or medicine or Vedic. And I can read their teeth and see which tooth is wired to which organ. And they might think, well, I got this rash here or this is here. But what I'm really doing is tracing the acupuncture meridian. So you really have to say after, 40, 50 years of doing stuff, I'm really nothing more than a plumber, an electrician, really. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah, but, these are the pH charts here. And I just want to say, as I showed on there, this is where the, people are taught here. This is where I hang out. This is like chakras. Where do you want to be, in the state of excitement or in the state of anger and stuff down here? Exactly. And by the way, Canada's Food Guide, all your tap waters, everything that they taught you in home economics and they're on most of the markets are down here.
Is wrong. Yeah, it's all wrong.
Yeah, so that's why we say you're in third dimension or whatever. This is what they call cancer. Okay, this is what they call get your RAM in your computer. It's your memory. No one can play with my memory too much. And so when you're creating this levitation, or ascension, call it whatever, atonement really, we're of time. What we're doing is the water's levitating. So my brain's hydrated. And if I have no mercury fillings, everything's going through and flowing. There's no disease and no block. Right. And so once I start using things that cross the blood-brain barrier, i.e. ormus or monatomic minerals in here, it creates an electrical field like a shield. Kind of like this is, So my moms were always the head of, if you ever watched Stargate, there's always a woman at the head. There's always this one. And so we want to have that sort of thing. And that's where people can get to the point where they're Solarians and Breatharians, like Jasmuheen and Jericho Genis Sunfire and all these other people that have done some very interesting type of lifestyles. And again, people have to do that in transition. But, I've known about Jasmuheen for like 15 years. I think she's an amazing woman. She hardly eats, hardly drinks. There's a couple now. If you look up Breatharian or Nadia, I was just talking. I mean, I just got to, not everyone can sit here and get, I'm on Facebook and I get contacted by, Dr. Gary Nell or, other people. And, last week it was Swami Natarajan. And I was like, wow, out of India. This is very cool. I go, Swami,
Right.
do you have like Skype? He goes, yes. So we Skyped for 49 minutes,
Wow.
and
Wow.
he says, your divinity, we've heard about it. And it's all about, he goes, I'm a natural Indian doctor too. And I said, he says, you're right. It's all about spring water. And we got to get especially the women, the bloodlines and salt mines and stuff used to be controlled by your original bloodlines, i.e. your clans, your tribes, is what people think families or the house of. Okay.
Right.
And so this is the time for sharing. And so, I'm kind of sitting in Saskatoon here on the South Saskatchewan and knowing that this water actually is being polluted, but comes off my little patch of land out there at Spring Coulee and, Cypress in that area. And then that was actually in hereditary law was to my babas, as people think babushka and stuff. It's about upgrading things, and as things are lost through generations or translations, and my Baba and Gita or whatever, they got somewhat colonized. They started using prescriptions. They were teaching in here and doing other things, but borscht now is to me getting a Vitamix and putting beets in with some carrots, and then whipping up some incredible cashew milk, and that's the most tasty thing anyone could have. If they want to learn how to upgrade that. And so that's why it's really important. Some of our original foods that we're sharing with you, nobility, are being re-released to the general population. And that's why I'm very thankful to people like, Marcus Rothkrantz and find someone that resonates. There's Mimi Kirk. There's Victoria Vitankos. There's Rose Vasili. A lot of these different people have got lots of great books on YouTube, and we teach for free. They can give you entire things called Nouveau Raw Amazing. I'm going to be excited going to Ottawa soon. We're going to set up an embassy there just south of that, off grid. I'm very thankful because some of the people I've now done as clients, as I went and got my 40 some feet of 14 gauge copper, the guy said, that's okay, we're going to make you one. And Swami says, just get Marin Keshi to come here and gift you one.
I know, that would be the thing, right?
That's the way to do it, right?
Exactly.
I'll do some biofeedback. We'll figure out something. I'm still trying to attempt to do it. But let's get the food. Everyone's got birch trees around. If they do, they can go find what's called Chaga. Chaga is a very important thing. Mushrooms are important. And the reason why it was actually Chaga in our language is that Chaga was actually a mushroom. And what it does is it grows on the side of the trees. When it grew on the sides of the trees, it spent 10, 15, 20 years doing that. And it's right up there. It was called the king of medicinal mushrooms, but reishi was called the queen. So when you think of traditional Chinese medicine or Asian, let's look at the poll up here. What you think Russia, Canada, Tibet, China, Himalayas, that's all from the same region on the original maps before we had pole shifts.
Okay.
So the original maps, the original laws, and actually the original territorial maps are still valid today that supersede any country, foreign or domestic, provincial, state, or federal court is ours. So just because things have shifted around a little bit doesn't mean it doesn't apply. So that particular mushroom collects all the nutrients in ormus. And now this is what we're using instead. And I call chemo and radiation. Well, this is what we use to keep radiation. And our chemicalization is really naturalization. So instead of allopathic, as a natural molecule, that's what we're doing. And they're doing a lot of studies of this because it's such a rich nutrient that it's actually one of the hugest things, when you're talking about enzymes and all your major minerals here, that all the facilities now around the world are showing that this Chaga mushroom, calcium, cesium, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, all that, silica is very important when we're talking about radiation production, and sulfur. But your vitamins B and D and amino acids come from the Chaga mushroom.
And so why is this mushroom so rich in nutrients and minerals?
Because what it's been doing is it's been growing and collecting. It's like been harvesting or collecting. It's like a mother. And so she's been collecting all the nutrients and drawing them up, almost like a placenta. And so what you're doing is, no one said that yet. I think I'm the first one to do that one. It's collecting it like a placenta, and it's collecting and feeding the nutrients. That's some other thing. That's why it's mine. And so what it does is it is basically been used in cancer therapies all around the world, and there's entire documentations that they've used in Russia, and we're just starting to do it. So these are actually, where they grow on the birch tree. So what we do is just, they go in, they're called harvesters. Not at all. They're called gatherings. So we call them mushroom gathering. I remember when I was a little girl with my baba going, but that's what some of them look like here. And so it's become quite the rage out here.
That
and
was
so,
one that she had in her hand. That was just one of them.
Isn't that huge?
That's huge.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of different things in here, and these are in the temples and stuff like that. So I'm going to really encourage people. So what we do is we gather them, break them down, and we put them in water, and we don't never boil water. Never boil. What we do is we just bring it to a slow warming. And what you're doing is just warming it up and extracting or extrapolating out the nutrients. So it sits in there. So that's what our herb teas are. It's like mushroom tea. It's like my mushroom soup. And then I can add different components to it, and herbs and different things like that. And we use that as, my enema water. I use it as my smoothie water. And then I can add in powdered cacao. We can add in berries and different roots. And so that really becomes, the core essence of it. This is something that I have. It's called Hus, Osha, or we call it bear root, bear clan. And so a lot of these roots too can be like Chaga, ground down in Vitamixes and used in powders or in smoothies. You can put them in capsules. And so this is what we want to be doing.
That was a root you just put on? Okay.
Yeah. This is actually, some people have heard of rat root, echinacea, ginger root, and all sorts of these roots.
Right, yeah.
But this is indigenous to some of the areas up here. And this is something, because it would look like a bear claw. So it has all these fingers that come down, and so it's gathered by a lot of the alders up here. And so we can go collecting that. So you can actually just cut it off like ginger root and stick it in your warm water. So that's what we really want to do, is get people down to the food. One of the things too is I'm going to show some pictures just the raw food, because people always have a misnomer that, oh my gosh, we're a bunch of rabbits. Well, we certainly aren't. In fact, the most creative culinary artists or chefs, gourmet chefs on the planet are what you call virgin or raw food chefs. And this is the reason why. So we had that. We saw the cacao bean. Okay. We break it up. It becomes into what we call nibs. And if you really want to get into it, there's a female and male part in here. There's a thing that looks like the stamen and the penis, and the other part that looks like the vagina. So we'll talk about gendering. Yeah, the creator's right within everything. This is like what they call the doctor and his signatures and stuff. So walnuts look like your brain, and broccoli looks like your, And remember, it's not really that color. It's the absence of that color. But what happens when you do that left over? You get something called cacao butter, which is like a paste. And that, when you mix it with coconut oil, is actually what we start the formation of making raw cacao or raw chocolate. And so I teach people how to make raw freezer chocolates. And you can do it in less than 6 minutes. And then I just pour them into some sort of a ice cube tray here that you can get it. Most people have lying around. And then you literally just pop them out. So I'll put in, a cup of cacao powder, a cup of that butter melted, maybe a couple teaspoons of the coconut oil, again through a double boiler, just melted down, liquefied. And then we add in basically the cup of cacao. I could use clear agave. I could use maple syrup. Something along that line, stevia, lucuma, mesquite, something along that line. I'm a vegan, so I wouldn't be using bees and stuff or any of their products, just because of what's going with Monsanto, and prefer them to put their own homes back together rather than train them into a box. But I'm not into keeping anything, on any level. And so excellent book on the world peace diet is Dr. Will Tuttle. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's amazing.
I haven't, no.
Yeah, it's amazing. When we start doing things, and I just wanted to bring to people's, way of how to do this, is really, I would take that, we'll just say 1 cup of cacao butter, a couple teaspoons of the coconut oil, melt it down, put your sweetener in to taste, and put your cup of raw cacao powder, or add some carob if you want. Then you can add other spices if you want, like goji berries and all sorts of things, and maca and other herbs. And I'm really thankful. There's a place up here called the Bulk Barn. And I'm thankful because they've been bringing in raw, in bulk, whatever amount you want, super reds, super greens. And then they have a super vegan hemp-based with 6 mushrooms in it. And so
Oh,
people can just go and get these rather than getting to have these big containers. So people, when they're first starting out, you can just get a little bag of this, and I'm really grateful because they're dumping the Christmas candy to bring in the health food now. So
that's nice.
thank you to Jerry in Saskatoon.
So
all it takes is
the cacao butter. Is that something that you have to make, or can people purchase that at a health?
Yeah, all the health stores have it. You can get, great suppliers for that. And you got to remember, once this bean gets ground down really, really, really fine again, then that's what you call your again, cacao or chocolate. And again, it hasn't been processed, never been cooked. We don't cook anything over 104 to 115 degrees and keep the integrity there. A lot of people too, I might put in then my essential oils. So I'll put in drops of frankincense or essential peppermint or essential wild orange or cinnamon or vanilla. Oh my gosh, raw cacao. And it's vibrating. So when people get it on their tongue, it opens. And again, this is in the tongue. This is a organ that is attached to everything, and it creates all the enzyme signatures. So your tongue, this is the head, lungs, kidneys, right? Once you get it on the tongue, it explodes everywhere. And so I have mock cocktails. So what I do is I put, peppermint here, and I'll put peppermint into my spring water or lemon. And then you can throw in some lemons if you like. But this is super concentrated. So 1 drop of peppermint will be like 26 cups of peppermint tea. Okay.
Wow.
So what it does is it helps clear the memory. So all those people having memory problems right now, this will start clearing that. And people with having breathing difficulties because of, chemical trails and other things and CERN and wind and all sorts of things now. This is how we can go back. But you got to remember, when you start drinking spring water, it's like holy water. It is holy water. And you put the minerals back in. What are you putting back into the system then? If you're a clear channel, you're going to be, that's how we're going to fix the waters and the waterways. And, the problems, and the problems, you start doing mushrooms. What's the mushrooms going to do? Mushroom spores and stuff like that will help transmute, basically, like the BP oil spill. The plastics, everything like that are polluting the oceans, and we need to be recycling. So if people don't really want to be recycled up on the moon base, they can take their choice to start recycling here, and stop the composting thing. It starts in your home. It really does. Everything's monitored. And so, and I, a lot of people, these are great little things. They're called vertical indoor gardens right now. And so you can get these little grow towers. They're amazing. And they can be on the deck. I've got lots of girlfriends that are putting them in their apartments. And there are several different varieties, and you can make it your home, do it yourself, but actually you can grow all your gardens in here.
Wow.
And if you are doing lettuces and stuff like that, then you can actually just save the stem, and there's like 15 vegetables you never ever have to buy again. And you shouldn't have to, because we all have free seeds. So we're looking for heirloom seeds, hereditary virgin, the original code. Like everyone wants, I want the, most original computer code. You don't want something off Pirate's Bay or something that's been hacked or copy.
Exactly.
We want the original code. And even in the supermarket, 9, as they say, is fine. Can be fined. You're finable because it's a 9. Is it a completion? But it is on the sticker on the food.
Right.
Virtually everything else. And unfortunately now in what you call the states, right now, the way certain people have been passing these legal acts, anything can be put on the shelves. They don't have to tell you what they were trying to do. I'm not in agreement with that.
No.
However, you could have a 4, a 7, an 8, a 3, and it could be basically experimental vaccines, Agent Orange. It can be recombinant things. It could be anything from snake venom in there to pus off some animal. And this is where we're seeing things like mad cow, listeria. Again, everyone is monitored. Everyone's kind of an experiment. So in order to purify stuff, we don't want.
Just in thinking about what you just said, there was a news article out that one of the first deaths tracked back to GMOs. Yep. And this happened earlier in the year in Barcelona.
Right.
But the young, 35, 36 years old that died, had eaten a salad and for lunch. And he, fell into some sort of fit or whatever, and they had to take him to the hospital, and he ended up dying. And when they went back into his system to figure out what was going on, all they saw was,
Yep.
you know, vegetables and what have you.
Yep.
It turns out that when they actually dug a little deeper, the tomato that he ate was spliced with fish genes, and he was allergic to fish.
Yeah.
So at the time that he was been admitted, he hadn't eaten any fish. They didn't look for that. So they may have been able to save his life. I don't know. But the point is that people don't know that. So there's a lot of people out here with fish and peanut allergies. And these companies are splicing vegetables with animal genes such that it could kill you. And you think that you're eating, a tomato. And this is the kind of information that really needs to get out and get circulated. The people, have to really take responsibility for what they're eating on a much larger and greater level than what they may previously have thought about, oh, people being vegetarians, or, oh, they're just, this thing has gotten a little deeper than that.
It is much deeper. And like a lot of people don't realize that once you're actually, and you're paying money, you're in a legal contract with that particular group, whoever it is. So, you're considered deemed property of Monsanto. If you've got that frequency or that barcode within you, is how these people try to do that. Yeah, I know. And, this is ridiculous. But, years ago, in fact, it's funny to be back at a home that I taught how to make orgone generators, 15, 20 years ago. Going, wow, it's really weird to come back into the city and go, oh yeah, I remember teaching that class. Of course, now how do we upgrade? I mean, we're soy-based and hemp-based resin instead of the clear stuff we used to do. Even I've upgraded my things. I'm on a grounding mat, by the way, too. And a lot of people don't realize this is an orgone mat, which is the same thing, and grounding mat that we talk about earthing. And so a lot of people haven't seen this, but I'm probably the hottest butt you've seen here in a long time. But it's actually amethyst crystal and black tourmaline that rotates all the way through here, and it's a little biomat like this. Yeah. And this is my girlfriend distributes it, Christine Van Art. She's at biomatcanada.com. Now, I used to have them in all my centers, all my massage rooms, and it has a negative ion field here, and so you can turn it up or you can turn it down, and it's an amazing thing here. So I can actually get it quite hot and go into a bit of an extra thermal thing, or just sleep. I sleep on it all night, by the way. But if you just turn it here, I can just keep the ionic field on. And so I'm grounded. Wow. I'm in my own little 0 point here. And so it goes out about 2 feet around me. Mm-hmm. And so it's like I'm protected against the radiation and the cell phones and the chemtrails. And I have the oils diffusing in here. But more importantly is I have the oils inside. And that is why you could look at all the clan mothers or clan men, right? Which you would call the kings and the queens or the pharaohs and pharaonics, and you go back to Moses or Tutmosis, really. Right. Merridith Quinn, the great Musa. So you can see the lineage and where people come off of, by the way. And
so let me ask you something real quick.
Yep.
When first of all, I was going to say that we're coming up on an hour, and I know we talked about keeping some of these talks to an hour so the people can be able to digest them all. And I know that you're going to come back again, and we're going to just kind of pick this up and just try to dump as much information as we can into people. So if you had to say like an actionable step that people can take today when they get off of this video to really help counteract radiation and some of the other, inhibitors, cancers, and things like that, what would be something that you could, a couple of quick things you could tell people to do, Karen?
What I'd really suggest too is really you're 80% water, so it's more what you absorb. So let's be that spring. If you want to have spring in your step and levitate, let's look for the spring water. Second thing is let's get some minerals back and electrolytes so that it will electrify your light up, and that's putting some saline in or soleil. Your soul. I don't use the word sun, but soleil. Go through that soul transit. And the other thing is getting the correct food into and getting high vibratory food, which is really aromatherapy foods, therapeutic medical grade. There are many different ones we looked at. Research what you like. There's some excellent ones. Again, Gary Young's done some great stuff. I know lots of different pieces too, but you can go and
I think we got the Eden Gardens. I just ordered some of that. And that's pretty good.
There's doTERRA and there's Eden's Garden.
Yeah, I
And
like
again,
that.
look for a therapeutic grade. I got some great ones here also from essentialaura.com on the island up here. And another girlfriend of mine, Valencia, has got Isis essential oils in Nelson. So again, I've got another friend of mine, Tony Nevis, and he's at A7 Montana at Hotmail. He's in
Mm-hmm.
Banff. So, I mean, people can go find these. There's all around us. The fourth
Right.
thing then would be is once you have all the stuff is you've got to chelate something out. So the oils will help chelate. That doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean you can, put all the Febreze you want and spray oils and it's going to be fine, because it isn't.
Oh yeah. No, it's
You've got to
not.
stop what you're doing. And so the thing is, we give you something to replace or add in. The other thing is to chelate out. So we've got bentonite clay, which is just a clay, like the clay masks you can put into water or into shakes with
Mm-hmm.
psyllium.
Mm-hmm.
You can use zeolite, and you can use activated charcoal to bind it up. The other thing is these mats will take out alcohol, tobacco, cholesterol, high blood pressure, that kind of thing too. They're excellent.
Wow.
I'm into
So
doing juice. It's great.
just one thing, just to go back to the Soleil. So we talked about findaspring.com. That's
Right.
one thing that our listeners can do. Go to findaspring.com and try to find some
Right.
spring water near you. The Soleil is, you can look, there's various recipes on the internet. So it's like Sol, S-O-L-E. And that's basically a brine that you can make
Correct.
with any of the salts, Himalayan black salts, Hawaiian salts, Celtic salts. And then that's what you take a few teaspoons of that every day and put it several times a day, as much as you're drinking water, really, and put those teaspoons into the water and constantly drink that, because that's going to start mineralizing. And also, and don't you recommend putting a little drop of borax or something in that, because that also helps to pull the radiation? Do that maybe once a day.
I do a little baby pinch of baking soda, which is bicarb, and a HCO3. I also put a tiny little bit of borax. And then the other thing that a lot of people know about too is actually something called MMS. If people want, if they're concerned, there's MMS here. And the other thing too, some people use a little bit of hydrogen peroxide or lemon essential oil. So those are all things, if you want to take extra precautions, knock yourself out. The other thing too is getting the foods dehydrated. What I want it to do is, I'm on the road. I've got less than maybe 3 little bags, and that's enough for me to last probably 3 to 6 months.
Wow. Okay.
Because I'm condensing the food. So this type of thing here, there's enough in here. This pound of dehydrated food represents 30 pounds of vegetables or fruits.
Right.
Which has been dehydrated. So all I have to do is add water back to it in a mixer, blender, Vitamix, NutriBullet, whatever, and it will come back to life. So that's the same thing. So if I took, I'm just going to show you here, goji berries. Okay, so we've got goji berries here. If you haven't seen them, they're a berry.
They're so good.
Yeah, these are amazing berries, and they've got about 15 trees. So open one up, plant 15 trees, then you can have them. What I do is I add them to water, rehydrate them, and then they come alive. So I can put them in chia seeds, or I'm going to make chia pudding for my particular supper thing.
Right.
And that's the start. The thing is getting, again, educated. All these people I'm talking about that I've learned from or have friends from, they're all teaching for free on YouTube. Everything's free. Even universities now we have for free.
Right.
We've got 40,000 practitioners. Dr. Bill Nelson has put out, it's known as the SKIO, QXCI, the Indigo, Doctor. They're all different varieties of radionic machines that all use Rife, Scalar, 0 Point, Orgon, Biomorph, Vega, all sorts of things all in one. So we're probably one of the largest trained natural health kind of practitioners in radionics that there are. So, I mean, I'm not the only one on the planet for sure. I do a lot of teaching and training up here and from here to the coast, and we can't see our clients on Skype.
Right.
And, I did my training through the Quantum Alliance, and, there's great people, got like Ken Wilkinson and Gage Tarrant and stuff like that, and all sorts of great people there. These are books you can get to, and people really have no idea. I mean, I'm making crepes. This is raw food here. I have lasagnas. I have spaghetti. And by the way, they're hot. We can have, what you call shepherd's pie and meatloaf. And I make broccoli quiches and all sorts of stuff. So these are what's going to be on my menu. And so, this is a portobello heart mushroom. That's actually going to be what we're going to be having for supper today or tomorrow.
Wow, that's yummy.
And I put him in a tribalist. I actually have a Excalibur dehydrator myself. But these are the type of things that we can have. And we'll be making, again, falafel burgers. And I'll just let you know, no one's got an excuse. I'm on the road. I've been in a suitcase for a while. So I come in. I usually have to bring my own food 'cause a lot of people don't have it. But here's some chickpeas or sunflowers. And I've already started sprouting. So they already have a tail on them.
Okay.
This is about living food. And so, you can get these little adapters or cheesecloth, or I don't care what you got. I've used a painter's bag if I had to.
Right.
Or cheesecloth, whatever. I prefer natural elements. But anyone can do that. So there's no excuse. I've got lots of bachelors. This is all that sits on their shelves. So they got this going, the sunflower seeds, the alfalfa sprouts, and whatever's growing.
So right there, those are chia seeds sprouting?
This one's actually garbanzo.
I meant to say garbanzo beans. Yeah.
Yeah, this is chickpeas. This will be hummus, but sunflower does the same thing. I usually do a lot more with sunflower myself. But
so now, what did you do there? You just took the dry beans and put them in a
water
jar with cheesecloth over it, and what happens? Do you put water in it? Okay.
Yeah, there you go. I'll show you how. Most people never. So make sure you put at least double the water because it's going to almost double its expansion here. And then you can put something on it. You leave it overnight, day one. And on the second day, you might rinse it once or twice. You could put in a little drop of essential oil or hydrogen peroxide just to clean it. Sometimes I'll put just a little bit of salt water too as a cleaning agent or whatever. And then you just tip it over and let it air dry. And within sometimes 24 hours, you'll see the sprouts coming out because they're starting to grow. And so we're living. That's why we call it living raw virgin food. It's like we're always alive. We're excited. We're radiating.
And so how would you eat that? You would make that into like a hummus, just sort of grind it down and make a hummus out of it?
I can make hummus. I can make actually falafel burgers, what you would call garden burgers.
Yeah,
so I can use actually great carrots and greens and all sorts of things and put it on a mushroom burger sort of thing and make a garden burger.
Oh,
so,
I'm hungry.
Now, and I'll just to take you further. So this is my base, and then what I'll do is I might put spinach on another one, so I'll have spinach hummus, and then I can take my dried tomatoes and make sun-dried tomatoes, and on the fourth one I'll maybe put some curry or garam masala, so then I can have like a curry from the same base.
Right.
And again, I use that kind of thing all the time. It's an amazing procedure, and people think I spent hours, but I can do like in an hour or two. I could do a whole week if I really wanted to for food. And again, that's doing crackers and hot soups and everything like that. So it all starts about the inner beauty.
What kind of crackers are you telling people?
We make our own crackers. You can dehydrate them, and actually, I actually have sort of a flatbread cracker here. I can show you. These have been dehydrated, and you can put them in the dehydrator.
What are they made from?
A lot of these are made from flax, or I'll grind up. This is a real spicy one in here. You got curry, and you can put in chili peppers and cayenne and stuff, or whatever you want, or flax, sunflower seeds, almond, walnuts, whatever, on these type of ones. And when you put them in the dehydrator, I've got stackable round ones, but for these you want the square ones. And so you'll do an entire, just pour it out like batter. And you let it dehydrate. So if I want to make, let's say, like a bread or a manna bread or zucchini bread or something like that, banana chocolate bread, I don't know, you'll make it a little bit thicker. And so instead of dehydrating for 4 or 6 hours, you might let it dehydrate overnight. And so then it's going to be a thick bread. Or, if I want to do a pie or something, I just take a couple shells out and I still do it that way. But this is actually a pliable one, so we could use it for tacos. Or this one I could use for a wrap.
Okay.
Right? Like your burritos and stuff too. Yeah. And again, I can pre-make them ahead of time and put, let's say, a filling in here. Like I could make that into a hummus, make a filling like a sushi. And then what I can do is leave it in the dehydrator. And so when you come home, you've got like a hot meal.
Oh.
So I really am the one with the golden arches. I really am the golden McDonald.
Yeah, you are the golden. You really are.
We got to go, in here. And like I said, having that idea of having living food is living people. And it starts in the mind. When you're eating food that's cooked, it causes brain damage. It's an inflammatory disease. So is eating wheat and dairy and animals.
All that, yeah.
And meat, I always say, they say, but we're having meat. And I went, meat was a word in the original tongue that meant to come together and to nourish. Wow. So there are many people, in fact, it was called Hallelujah Acres, a Reverend George Marcus or something like that. Marcus, it's been so many years. But they had Hallelujah Acres, and they were just following everything according to what they called Levitical scriptures. And it was going back to the garden. And there are books called Back to the Garden and stuff like that. And Jericho did. And again, people were reversing all these conditions because you're going back to your original state. And that's why just drinking lemonade with some molasses, like everyone I have basically is 1 cup of water, half a teaspoon of molasses or maple syrup or half a teaspoon of baking soda, put a little bit of salt in it, some lemon, and drink those drinks throughout the day. Have 3 or 4 of them. Right. And then you're getting the enzymes, you're getting everything, all your nutrients, and my little teaser today is actually goji berry. And if you want to have the sweetest drink in the world, is just then drink the goji berry water. Yum. It is so yummy.
I have to do that. I haven't done it. I put the goji berries in my water like that. I'm always just eating them. So let's say that one of the things, so in wrapping up, because we'll, come again next week if you have some time, but so let's just say that Karen's given some ideas on exactly, a lot of knowledge on exactly what to do, how to get started. And also, you can be reached through Klan Mother 13, right, at Gmail. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Klan Mother 13 is with a K, and then I'm always on Facebook. And then one thing before we go in closing, as a colon hydrotherapist, it's all about the water. This is 33 feet we have to go through. We've done 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years or more of old programming, and that's what this is. It's old programming, and it reflects here. So if the women want to look younger, and the men, and get their hair back and their sparkle in their eyes, and not have the wrinkles and stuff, people are always amazed. They always think I'm like 10, 20 years younger than I am. Yeah. I don't have wrinkles. Right. And what happens is it's hydration, but it's salt and hydration. And so that is actually as simple as it is. And this is actually a great thing for improving people's hormones, or as you call the love-making hormones. Okay. This is about, longevity, and it starts here. And this goes back to the Seeing Gospel of Peace. So anyone wants to talk about scriptures to me, this is the original way they did it. And it's actually, you can see the reflexology and the raindrop technique and the massages and the oils are all in those old books. So that's an enema, right? Okay, go ahead. That's an enema bag. And it's no different than an IV bag. It has a little tube. And we just actually, Marcus shows you how he does it. Dr. Robert Casser tells you how to do it. David Wolfe. How do you spell Robert's last name, Casser? I don't spell, but Dr. Robert Casser is Cassar. Wait, Cassar. Okay, just for our listeners, Karen is doing a lot of mentoring here with this with my old ways. And so the spell is all about creating spells, casting spells, and all that stuff. And so it's really about, when we talk about healing the mind, it is about using different language. And even when you were talking earlier, I was thinking how so many people say, what's your diet? And you were telling me one time we were talking, you say, I don't diet, I live it, and it's so true, it's all those words are signals and keys to our body and to our higher consciousness that we're constantly telling it what to do. And then you wonder why you're lacking energy, or you're sick, or things are not going well. We're constantly telling ourselves, based on our learning, how we're being taught, death, basically. Well, and this is one of the things too, is that we want to get into a state of eternal longevity. We call it longevity technology, super immunity, reversing calcification. Again, everything's at a nano level. So, I mean, to me, the most important things is the water and the salt, is that you become the generator. You become, instead of, the mag grav machine or the plasma. The plasma is the blood. And so when you start learning about these free energy techniques and really what copper's doing in the salt water, that's really what you're missing inside. So you're going to actually create a field around you to regenerate what you're missing inside. You're bringing things in from the outside that you're missing on the inside, right? So really the idea of free energy, well, over unity and community, that's what it is. That's what relations were to be, or divine alchemical marriages, or instead of dating, intercourting, you would know the courting protocols between the nations, you know.
Right.
And so part of the cleaning out thing, I don't date, but not that we would, but that's when you get into the thing about twin rays and stuff too, or beloveds, is that they would spend after close to about 2 years, 1 to 2 years cleaning out, and that meant detoxing, as you know it, or defragging your computer, you know, sort of thing. And we just put in warm water, spring water. I put in sometimes baking soda. There's 101 recipes on the internet, and you can go to Alderbrook or look at Do It Yourself, you know, in here. Look at Prime Pacific for professional colon hydrotherapy practitioners, because I am one as well. You know, we've got a great one that, you know, being used here too is my girlfriend Candace took over my old center. She's got, you know, Sunday morning organic hair salon and all aesthetics and natural makeups and minerals that you put on your eyes. And they're going into, I'm teaching her, like I said, sugaring. We don't wax. You know?
Right, exactly.
We can do things like that. Yeah, you know, you can take raw cacao and put it on your eyes here. That's raw cacao and stuff, different, you know, things, and blueberries. You know, you can take beets, and for that matter, or, you know, acai thing, and know what to do if you're really into it. But back in here, like 3-4 cups of warm water. I put in lavender essential oil. I put in saline. I put in borax. You know, I put in frankincense. And you can put in all your parasite cleansers in there. And basically you'll start noting that your hormones start going through the roof, because all of a sudden you're vibrating, you feel energetic, you are tired. You're getting the blocks out and the plugs that may have been there. And you got to remember, we're like computers. That isn't poop. It's old information stuck in your system, no longer useful. So is it physical? It could be a mental block or an emotional block, or attached to the organ of the chakra. So your whole colon is a portal to another chakra. So for example, just to give you an idea, if it was something on my right, what we call the ascending colon, and it might be on the side of my, you know, just under the liver, there's an uptake there. One goes to the heart and the other one goes to the thyroid. So maybe I got thyroid issues, or maybe it's from all the mercury dumping in, or maybe my 5th chakra, my communication center, is just being affected, and I can't communicate clearly because my chakra's not open. Or, you know, the blue or whatever, but it's not absorbing the blue spectrum or those minerals. And again, minerals, if you know about, it's kind of like the Masons, you know, in 30 degrees, but as you levitate, there are different points in the colon, and you have different minerals that go up the spinal cord as well. And they would levitate to a certain thing. So the noble elements would rise above that, you know. So this is way above, you know, secret, super space.
Right, exactly. Because I know you and I have been Skyping on our my healing sessions, and you have me now in a series of colonics. I think I just finished my 4th one yesterday of
How was
6.
it? Share. Can you share? Can you share?
Yeah, it was really, really good. And when you were talking just now about how things are connected, I definitely, because now I'm getting into the deeper part of the more mucoid, and if anyone wants to look online and see pictures of all this stuff, you'll see what we're talking about. But that first layer of stuff that's peeling off of the colon wall, and it's interesting because just what you were saying, as I was laying there, and the, you know, water was coming in and releasing, I could literally feel as some of that sludge, that slimy sludge, was actually, you could feel it pulling away from the colon walls. And I could really feel that it was, I could actually feel the interconnected to other parts of my body, you know, and some of it was emotions. You could feel an emotion. Like at one point I felt like a huge relief. It was just a relief, like, oh, you know, I can't say what the emotions were, but it was a really positive relief, you know, through that release. So what you're saying, I mean, is so, so true. And I also want to just say, as a part of my personal experience in working with Karen, when she talks about the biofeedback, and how she does a remote. And I remember asking you, well, how does that work? And you were saying it was like a cell phone, and, she gets your coordinates and all your pertinent information. And then she can just kind of like beam right in on you. And when you said it's like a cell phone, that's such a great analogy, because all of us understand, or we think we understand, how a cell phone works. So at least if you can agree that a cell phone works, you can also relate to how the biofeedback machine and system that you're using is working. And I remember the first time that we worked together, and you had me lay down, and you said, we got off of Skype. We weren't even on Skype any longer at that point. You said, give me about an hour, just relax. And I did. And I could literally start beginning to sense the scanning that was going on. And at one point, the midsection of my body just kind of, the muscles just began to respond to raising, as if an energy or signal was sensing that, there was some looking and some stuff that was going on, and it just maintained itself. And so it was really interesting that without being, because I'm not into being spooky wooky and all that airy fairy, it was like mystical and my body was raising. No, I really believe that the signals that was going from the biofeedback machine as you were scanning, my muscular structure was responding to the scanning and what was going on, just very much like if you were in a doctor's office and they're scanning the body and then tell you to turn over, or they touch your arm or they lift your arm up. It was that kind of, that sort of sensory that was going on. So I wanted to share that because I wanted the listeners to understand that this is very hands-on. Even though it may seem remote, you'll be surprised at the kind of feedback and results that you'll get. Not only the fact that when you do share the results, Karen, I mean, you sent me tables and tables and tables, like, I don't know, it was 10 or 12 of them through the email. And then we did a session where you sort of just kind of began to show me some of the stuff that you're seeing and some of the areas that we're working on. So it's a very comprehensive procedure that Karen does. And so I wanted to just to share that, my own personal experience since we're going through this.
Thank you. I think that's really, we each have our own oath of that, and you've got to have the experience. And so trying to explain this, or trying to explain like Keshi or free energy machines, that we are going to be putting this in for growing food. This will be growing food without any money. And right now you can look up vertical gardening, and they do it in Singapore, like 7 stories of indoor gardens, because we know we have to do this because of the radiation and the contamination. And what's happened is that people have been drugging up the planet for so long that it doesn't matter what we plant in the first 4 to 5 feet of this planet, it's virtually been, screwed over, so to speak.
Right.
And so we need to look at different methodologies till we can get the other things onto the planet to clean it up. And there's a lot of, and I just think of E.T. It's like, E.T. call mama or something, go home. But, there's a lot of things that can be done, but not until we get some stuff straightened out here first. And, I think this whole thing about, having an experience is amazing. Trying to explain this is like, this is how we use it in our cosmonauts programs.
Right.
I'm not hooked up with the guy through the shuttle.
Right.
Something goes down, it's like Patty Bessard. They send Patty up there to go get it. Or I'm talking to Captain Max Steele or to Randy Kramer or whatever. Just because you don't have the experience of going to Mars, maybe some of these people do that are friends of mine.
Right, exactly.
I like having interesting conversations. It amuses me.
And my thing is, if I didn't see it and you didn't see it, how do we know it didn't happen? I mean, just kind of go with the interesting conversation and process it along the way. That's how I am as well. Well, we probably should go ahead. So go ahead and say some few closing things. I think we're on about an hour and a half, but we'll definitely. I mean, I know you've committed to do some more of this in this series because you really want to get the word out and help people. So we'll definitely come back with more information.
Yeah, one of the things I do want to say, just make very clear, is that I don't charge people. Okay, so I know most practitioners charge sometimes hundreds of dollars, if not more, per hour. I don't do that. It's an agreement between me and that individual, even as a client, and we decide what's required in the moment and what is it something that we can both share that's available. And sometimes, I don't use bank accounts, I don't commerce, and I don't want any debt or fiat currency. So what I want to do is also show people a different way to do things, and everything is on this planet that we can access. It's like We own nothing, but we have to learn to access everything and share everything.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so we know that people are in different levels and different transitions. And that's one of the things. So for example, you know, that's how I got some of this food is I did some stuff. I do community contribution all the time. And so, you know, they might do it, or I just did this incredible thing. You know, there's beautiful things that say bedding at Bon Voyage, Bed Voyage, you know, all bamboo. What is the best thing we could do? We don't need to be using polyester. This is all, you know, still eagle, or it's from twigs and squirrels in Saskatoon. People that are sustainable, that are growing, that are already on this path. That's who, you know, friends don't charge friends.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
and we have to learn, you know, when you expose a female Illuminati, that we're doing the same thing, and the leftovers were given to the rest of the population, and they charged them more because they weren't their friends.
Exactly.
But you know, but that's about
Exactly.
learning to have peace and be friends with these people as well, and making the ill Illuminati the well Illuminati. You know, if everyone was well, we wouldn't have some, you know, problems here. So
exactly.
You know, this is a transition phase, I realize, for a lot of people, but this is about having fun now. And there isn't anything that we can't transmute. And there's a lot of friends in a lot of high places that, you know, are watching here and around and coming onto this planet. And everyone wants to see that, you know, for our children. And I know you're a mother as well. You know, to be able to stand here and say, I love this because that kept my sanity so I could look after my children, Allison and Alexander. Doesn't matter where they go.
Exactly.
You know, I remember Alex, I said, how could you feel when mom's doing this? He goes, it's like having a comforter, Mom. He says, I know he says, you're always up here with me.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
And I looked at that. That's great. Even through stuff they've been through hard times and mind control and stuff having to be here as well, and dealing with the legalese and stuff that's been done to a lot of these very gifted children, you know, there are ways. And once we get, you know, into some really great, safe places for them, and we get things restored properly, everyone, you know, I'm not against anyone. I'm not even as a registered, you know, I was a registered nurse at one point, right? I'm not against the registered nurses. We're here to show how to actually nurse from a different perspective.
Exactly.
And, you know, this was considered to be, was it private? Was it elite? Was it military? It's super, you know, genius, you know. And this is not about being crazy. This is actually about genius. And this is memories.
Exactly.
And a lot of us just know how to do things, or we wish to share things so that there's a transition. And I mean, can you imagine? I took these into the hospital. What a difference, you know? But it's not a place I require to be. There are other people that can do that now, you know, and that's where a lot of us want to be, back in our lakes and in the mountains and away from all the craziness, you know?
Exactly. That's what I'm working on.
Because we've already done it.
Yeah, it's definitely time to. So
it is.
So
thank you.
So no, definitely. Thank you. I mean, this, you know, I always enjoy our time together because I mean, some of the listeners, I'm always writing and making notes on all this. And I've made a lot of notes today. So I'm going to put, just for the listeners, some notes will be in the description bar beneath the video. So that always helps. I know I find when I listen to people, you don't sometimes know what the spelling is or what did they exactly say. And it can be a little frustrating because you want to follow up. So we'll make sure that gets up. And so then again, I'll also put your links, Karen, but it's Klan Mother 13. That's with a K at gmail.com. Also, you have the Facebook page, which is Karen, and is it Lucy McDonald on the Facebook as well?
There's a Karen Ann McDonald, and then there's a Karen McDonald as well. So, you know, and you'll see a lot of the different groups we belong to. I know I was just talking to Kathy Ciccone. We were at a drum circle, and they were just all of a sudden listening to, you know, Dr. Stephen Greer and the disclosure and serious stuff. So there's a lot of stuff I'll start posting, or how to do. Just follow on the Facebook. That's my blog. And then I've got a Karen Ann McDonald, Lusick McDonald. I think there's a community Facebook, like a fan page or something, community page to be started too. Yeah, and stuff.
So we'll have all that up there, and also, well, it'll be below these videos as well. So, All righty. Well, let's probably wrap it up because we've given
Great.
the listeners a lot to listen
I know.
to and start working on some actionable steps. And we'll get back next week with some more around this whole healing topic and up in between time because we're down so many rabbit holes. Who knows what we'll talk about next week?
Oh, I know. We'll probably be updating on the stuff too. How why you can't detain a clan mother because it's an act of war and an act of treason. So we have to deal with
We'll be
the
updating on
departments
that
here,
one for
the
sure.
Saskatoon City
We'll have
Police
some-
and the Crown
we'll have some-
Prosecutors.
You're going to have some fresh material on that one, so we'll look forward to that update.
We will because they've been all given their proclamations years ago, right? So I mean, there's no such thing as suspended anything. It's because we don't have them and I don't make them. I know who I am.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
alrighty. Well, Karen, again, thank you so much. Your Grace, our Clan Mother. I can't thank you enough for all that you bring in our sharing.
You, Robin. Yeah, thank you, Robin. Duck.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And so we'll be back.
Yeah.
Merci beaucoup. And we'll be back for another session soon. And thanks again. Please share this video and send it around because as many people that we can get this information out to and get on this healing track, the better it's going to be for the planet. And we're also helping Gaia when we do this. We're helping Mother Earth.
Absolutely.
So we'll talk a little bit about that connection next week, maybe about the connection with our healing and Mother Earth and how that all is symbiotic. That's probably something to help people understand as well.
Absolutely. We're going to come back to original signatures and sacred spots. So, yeah.
Right. All right. Well, thanks a lot. And until later, we thank you. It's this Circle Healing Network. And please continue to join us. Bye-bye.
See you later. Oh, that was lovely. That is great.
I know. I'm trying.